Fran and I are so disappointed that we didn't get to share all these tips and tricks with you that we were going to do at the mystery class. And now it's not a mystery because you already know what your project's going to look like. We had the Civil War version and the Brights, and they look totally different because of the fabric placement. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead today and show you all the tips that we would have shown you if we'd been able to see you in person. Okay, our first favorite thing, there's lots and lots of strips that you're going to have to cut with this project. And it took us no time flat to cut the strips because we use this stripology ruler. And I bought the first version of this. I might have to get this second version. It's a little bit longer and it has some extra markings on it. But anyway, first thing you do, fold your fabric into fourths and line it up so that you can get a clean cut here on the side. So the first thing I do is cut my 0. And I'm going to cut 1.5 inch strips. So I come over to 1.5 and I put the blade in, and 3, and 4.5, and 6, and 7.5. And all my strips are perfectly straight. Anytime you're starting a project, make sure you know where your 1/4 inch is. Every foot's a little bit different on every machine. I have 3 different machines. The 1/4 inch is actually in a different place on all of them. So I use this perfect seam piecing guide. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little tiny hole right there, and you put your needle through the hole, line it up, put your presser foot down, and then put something next to it that's got a ridge to it. There's purple strips that we sell that are flexible, especially if you have a machine with a curved front. So those work really good. I cut up cute credit cards and use Scott's repositionable tape on the back, and I can stick that on my machine. Then you remove your needle and get this out of the way, and now you have a guide that will give you a perfect 1/4 inch on your machine. Now that you've cut all your strips and you know exactly where your 1/4 inch is on the machine, you can start sewing the strips together. So we've got 2 different colorways, the Civil War version and the Bright version, and they're both represented on this demo board. When you sew your 2 pieces together, press it from the top and press into the seam to make sure you get a nice flat seam. One little thing that we found in the Brights version, this little blue here, they put a huge selvage print. So you might have to cut a couple extra squares at the end, because you won't get, we calculated on getting 20 across and you only get 19, but see that huge selvage. And then you're going to subcut them into 2 patches and turn those into 4 patches. The other thing we like to do, and Fran, is spin the centers. So we pop open that center and show them how it spins, and it reduces the bulk. So you get a teeny tiny 4 patch in the center. That's how you know you did it right. Okay, step 2, we're making the rail fence. Again, we have perfect strips because we use the stripology ruler. Here's our Bright version and the Civil War version. Press toward the colored fabric, and then all of them will go together nicely. Oh, and measure this strip set. It should be 3.5 inches from side to side. If it's not 3.5, you need to double check your 1/4 inch seam again. And then we subcut them. Fran's going to demo how to make the Magic 8. You're making 8 half squares at one time, and how we suggest some of the suggestions on trimming those down to the right size.
So one of our other tips that we're going to show you is how to do 8 half square triangles using 2 squares. This is a really nifty trick, and you can use it on anything that you're going to do when you're making half square triangles. So here's the formula. Get a pen and pencil, or get a paper and a pen, whichever one you want to do, and write this down. So you're going to take your finished size of your half square triangles and you are going to add an inch and then multiply that by 2. So our blocks are going, this is an 8-inch square here. So when I finish, my blocks are going to be 3-inch blocks. So I'm going to add an inch onto that. There's my 4 times 2 is 8. So I have cut out 2 8-inch squares. Then another thing that we absolutely love at Village Dry Goods, and if you don't have one yet, you really should. It's called a magic wand. And no, I can't turn you into a toad or a princess, but I can help you draw lines. So you're going to lay your ruler from corner to corner. And I don't know if you can see, but there is an etched line right down the center of that ruler. That etched line is what you want to have corner to corner on your block. And only have one of these pieces of fabric there. And if you lay it on a sandpaper board, it will keep your fabric from shifting around. So I've got my block on my sandpaper board. I'm going to take my mechanical pencil. And I like just an old cheapy Bic mechanical pencil. You can use the fancy quilting ones, but you don't need to. Draw your line on both sides, all the way up, all the way down. Move your ruler, come to the opposite sides, and draw 2 more lines. Now, when you see all of these orange lines, those are just there so you can visually see what's going on. You don't need to do all of these lines that are on there. Okay, then I'm going to take my squares, I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm going to sew down one side, up the other. Come to the opposite side and do exactly the same thing. When I've done that, now I'm ready to cut. Now, this is an important part, so don't mess it up, guys. You are going to take, and we really like a rotating mat for this because I don't have to pick up my blocks. I lay my fabric on here. Once I've cut, I'm going to rotate it so I can get to the other angle. Okay, so I'm going to then lay this square onto my rotating mat and I'm going to cut it. Now, do you see the orange marks that are marked here and here? That's the center in both directions. You're going to be cutting that one very first. You can use any kind of a ruler. This is just an 8.5-inch Creative Grids. You have that laid on there. You can see it's pretty doggone close to being an 8-inch square. You're going to move that ruler in 4 inches. Okay? Make sure you got your 4 along here, and you're going to make your first cut. Do not move those fabrics. Rotate your block around. So now I've rotated it and it's on this direction again. I'm going to once again lay my ruler on there, line up my 4 inches along the edge of my square, and I'm going to cut. Now I've got those pieces cut apart. So now if I wiggle or jiggle a little bit, it is not going to matter. So now you're going to take your ruler, come in here your 1/4 of an inch, and you're going to cut in between your X marks where you've sewn that together. Both directions. So now I've got this all cut apart. When I've got that cut apart, I have 8 half square triangles. Zip zap super fast. Now, to trim up our half square triangles, you can use, of course, any method that you like. These are just a few to show you. And once again, I'm going to have my pieces on our board. So let's just go ahead and take one off and I'll show you. This is a fun new ruler that I just found last summer when we were doing our summer block of the week, and I really quite like it, and I'll show you why. Again, it's a Creative Grids, but what you're going to do, we know that these are going to finish 3 inches. These are your markings on here where you're going to be trimming it, and so you're going to lay your ruler right along here, and I'm going to put that 3-inch white line right there along my seam line, not the edge, that goes on your seam line. I would then take my rotary cutter and snip these 2 sides. Okay, so I'm just going to take this rotary cutter and I'm going to cut this direction and I'm going to cut this direction while it's closed, because now, guys, guess what? I don't have to trim off 4 sides, 2 sides, and we're done. Now, you can do one more fun thing with your ruler. You can take this side of your ruler, you can come over here, line up your edge, and you can trim this part off. My dog ears are gone. Then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to press it. There's your perfect half square triangles, and you will get 8 perfect half square triangles. They're a little tiny bit oversized, but you saw I trimmed very little off. So when you trim these guys, you've got 4 perfect half square triangles all ready to go for you for your quilt. So that's our fun trick for the magic 8 half square triangles. Other options for trimming that, I know I've shown you the Creative Grids ruler, but if you have your block lock rulers, it has to be at least a 3.5 inch block lock, but it can be 3.5 all the way up to 6.5, 8, whatever you have. But here's a fun little trick if you're using a block lock. When you go to trim these, your writing has to be to where this grooved part on the back butts into the seam. And if it doesn't, you're not going to be able to trim that accurately because it's not the same distance. So you butt that in, you trim these 2 sides, you then, and mine's already this size, but let's just say we've still got a little bit left over here. Don't move your ruler, rotate it around, slide your ruler down, and I'm sorry this has got plastic on the ruler, but you would slide your ruler down to your 3-inch marking and trim your other 2 sides without ever picking that up. Of course, if you have any size ruler, you can trim your block down, your half square triangle down to any size you need it to be using any ruler that you like to square up. Creative Grids has these fabulous 45-degree angles on it, so I can lay that right along my seam and I know, boom, and I'm on it, and now I can trim 2 sides, rotate it around, and trim my other. So lots of different fun ways to trim up your half square triangles.
The last unit to make is called a melon or a snowball. I call them a snowball. And I like using a tool, and we'll show you that tool. But then I don't have to draw all these lines, and it just saves me that much time. By putting the angle tool on, and this is what's my angle. If you have an angler, which is an older version, they don't make those anymore. So we discovered this what's my angle. It has fewer lines, and it's great. And so what you do, instead of drawing the line, you just keep the point coming up as you're sewing in, and you don't have to draw all those lines, but you get a straight line on the diagonal. After you've sewn all the little squares on, you'll trim away at 1/4 inch the 2 backgrounds and press toward the corners. That's also a 3.5 inch unit. And now we put our blocks together. So taking the 4 patches, watch your orientation that the colored pieces are going toward the center. Okay, when you're putting your block together, I nest the seams, and instead of trying to put 3 pins in there, I can feel when I've got a perfect join. And then I use these forked pins, and you pin on both sides at the same time, and it holds it right in place so that you can sew your line and not lose your perfect points. They come in a package like this from Clover. There's a lot of them. I put 2 or 3 in my pin cushion. I lose them. So then I have to put new ones in. But this is how the forked pins come, and I love the forked pins. And when I press the block, pressing, you want to press, remember, into the seam from the top side so that you get a nice flat and no tucks. But as soon as I finish pressing it, I put the clapper on it and prepare my next seam. Well, just the heat and the weight of this clapper make that seam lay perfectly flat. And this is the Civil War unit. And those are your bright ones. And the last block unit is block B. And this is where we take the half squares and the rail fence and the snowball and make a big 9 patch. This is the entire bright mystery quilt. And this is what it'll look like when you're done. I did something fun on the back. I bought 4 pieces and pieced the back.
So this is what your Civil War quilt is going to look like. These are the darker colors. And I want you to pay attention to how it looks so different with how the colors were placed on the 2 of them. totally different look, exactly the same pattern. They were really a lot of fun to do, and we're so sorry that we didn't get to share them with you. And for my back, I got lazy and just did one piece because it had to get to the quilter to be done fast. So we hope that you guys will enjoy making your quilt. We look forward to seeing you next year at Amy's Retreat for the Mystery, and it'll be a whole brand new quilt. So thanks for joining us.